Good morning to one and all. We are delighted to welcome the Dosa family to the Dosa Alumni Meet and Awards 2021. I'm Architect Professor Madhurima Bakshi. Now we request our HOD ma'am, Architect Professor Kirti Vinay Kumar to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Architect Madhurima and Architect Sabrina, for giving me this opportunity. Good morning to one and all present here. It is a great pleasure and privilege to extend a cheerful welcome to you all to the TOSA Virtual Alumni Meet 2021 to celebrate and cherish the past moments. With the blessings of the founder chairman, the visionary educationist, late Vidyashri S. Narasaraju Garu, the founder of Children's Education Society, I, Professor Kirti Vinay Kumar, take an opportunity to welcome today's guests of honor, Dr. Amarnath K., Director of the Oxford Educational Institutions, and Dr. Ravi Kumar K.M., Director of the Oxford College of Engineering and Architecture. A hearty welcome to our Principal, Architect Professor Pranoti Nagaraj. I am glad to welcome all the TOSA alumni students of all the 4 batches. I also extend my warm welcome to my dear colleagues, guests, and current students of TOSA. Vidya Sarvatra Shobhate, the Oxford Educational Institutions, established in the year 1974 under the aegis of Children's Education Society, has proved a beacon to all knowledge seekers not only within our country but also globally. It made an humble beginning with 24 students and 2 teachers. During the last 4 decades, the Oxford Group has seen exponential growth under the guidance and leadership of its president, Sri SNVL Narasimha Raju. The Oxford School of Architecture was established in 2012, initially as a Department of Architecture under the Oxford Engineering College. Later in 2017, it became an independent school of architecture with a separate block with an area of 2 acres. The first batch itself has made TOSA proud by securing first rank with gold medal to VTU by the student Ms. Rutusha Nagaraj in the year 2017. And once again, our 4th batch student Ms. Monica Valase has increased our pride by securing 5th rank to VTU in 2021. I'm glad to say with 4 outgoing batches, around 250 students have graduated from TOSA. With this, I would like to welcome all the dignitaries once again. Thank you.
It's our tradition to seek the blessings of Almighty before the start of any auspicious event. So let us start the event with an invocation song.
कपिलो गजकर्णकः लम्बोदरश्च विकटो विघ्ननाशो गणाधिपः धूम्रकेतुर्गणाध्यक्षो बालचन्द्रो गजाननः द्वादशैतानि नामानि यः पठेत् शृणुयादपि
Hello all, my name is Architect Professor Sabrina Rahman. I shall be co-hosting with Madhurima ma'am. Now we welcome our Principal, Architect Professor Pranoti madam, to say a few words about our esteemed chairman. Over to you, Pranoti ma'am.
Yeah, good morning to one and all present here. It's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to you all. So on behalf of TOSA faculty, I want to welcome again Dr. K.M. Ravi Kumar. So I would like to introduce our chairman, founder. There are no words which can convey our awe and respect for the late Sri Narsaraju Garu, the visionary founder. He formed Children's Education Society in 1974, under which the Oxford Group of Institutions were established. We would like to start this event in his remembrance. With high respect, I introduce the visionary educationist late Vidyashri S. Narsaraju Garu, the founder of Children's Education Society. So we remember him forever and pray for his blessings in all our endeavors. Now, it's my honor and privilege to introduce our respected President of Children's Education Society and the Chairman of Oxford Educational Institutions, Sri SNVL Narasimha Garu. Under his dynamic leadership and futuristic vision, the Oxford Educational Institutions have always been at the forefront of education. He is responsible for the technological growth of the institutions and the state-of-the-art facilities which we are enjoying today. He has powerful plans for future development. He takes keen interest in welfare of faculties and students as well. So on behalf of Director, faculty and students of the Oxford College of Architecture, I extend a very warm welcome to our Chairman, Sri SNVL Narasimha Garu. Yeah, over to Madhurima.
Now we discuss Architect Kirti to say a few words about our guest of honor, Director Amarnath K. Sir. Kirti ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madhurima. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our director, Dr. Amarnath K. He is a multifaceted personality, an eminent academician, and an able administrator. He is currently the director of the Oxford Educational Institutions. Sir holds PhD in Structural Engineering from IISc Bangalore, and his research interest in this area also has seen him provide expertise to various completed and ongoing research projects. Sir's experience include he has worked as Professor of Civil Engineering, Vice Principal and Principal at many institutions in Bangalore. Also worked as Senior General Manager in Cunningham Lindsay International Private Limited, Bangalore. Sir has many awards to his credits. He has more than 50 publications in national and international journals and conferences to his credit. Sir has guided TOSA in many ways. Today, due to some unexpected work, he could not make it to the event. Thank you.
Now we request Architect Professor Pranoti Nagaraj Madam to say a few words about our guest of honor, Dr. Ravi Kumar KM Sir. Over to you, Pranoti Madam.
Yeah, so it's my pleasure again to introduce our guest of honor, Dr. KM Ravi Kumar, who has more than 20 years of rich academic experience in teaching and research with several awards and honors. He has an engineering graduation in electronics and communication from Bangalore University, has post-graduation in biomedical instrumentation from VTU, has PhD with focus on digital signal processing from VTU as well. His areas of interest are speech signal processing and digital signal processing. He has a patent. He's been an active member of various professional bodies. He has several publications listed in international journals, conferences and at national level too. He is on editorial board member for International Journal of Engineering, and his major achievements that includes he was a part of subcommittee 2-member task force on implementation of National Education Policy 2020, and I think we had a very good presentation last week about this. He is also as an expert committee member for National Board of Accreditation, New Delhi, as an assessor of NAAC. Then he's been a special officer, member, board of examiners, PG coordinator, member LIC, member of steering committee, member of grievance redressal cell for VTU. He's been an academic advisor for National Cyber Safety and Security Standards, also on National Advisory Committee member board, and he has attended several training programs. He has guided few PhD students as well, delivered several talks. So now I request our director, KM Ravi Kumar, to address our students. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for introducing myself to 4 batch of students. As Kirti madam said, there are around 200 plus of students who are passed out from. First of all, I'd thank department, Mr. Pranati Nagaraj, Kiti, Kiti, staff members, those who have given me an opportunity to interact with people and share my, and interact myself with the students of course. So dear students, networking is one of the important things which is to gain knowledge and to learn whatever we require to optimize ourselves. There are different stages of learning. Number one, at a school age or at the home, right? Usually, actually, the entire lifespan is divided into 4 parts: school learning or childhood learning, and next comes to college level, then comes to your professional learning, then once you retire, the retirement comes. So, at every stage, one or the other will be there to guide us. For example, when you are just born, right, up to 3 to 4 years of time, you will be completely guided by your parents. So parents are our teachers at that time. They will teach us how to speak, what to speak, how to walk, and how to behave. Everything we will be learning at that time. So during the school and college time, our teachers will help us. They help us what are the other knowledge that we have to gain so that we face the challenges of this society. And the most important thing, the employer. So when we start working, the employer gives us the entire energy in terms of salary to face all the problems that we face after our education. So once we have retired after 58 years or 60 years, the society will teach us what we have learned and whether we have properly dealt with all sorts of living beings in our entire life. So whatever the nature says, the nature's attitude is, whatever we have gained from the nature, so one way or the other, we have to give it back to them. Right? So as I said, the first stage where you learn from your parents, so we have to give back to our parents, so we have to take care of them at their old ages and try to fulfill all their ambitions. So number 2, school and colleges. So whatever the teachers they have taught us during that school or college time, so if we utilize that knowledge for the benefit of the society, then they will be completely happy with us. And the employer, so as they are paying salary to us, so if we fulfill their objectives, their applications, their projects are done well within a particular time, they will be happy. Finally, the society. Because we are living in the society before. So whatever we do, we see that the society is not disturbed and that society should be preserved for the future. So everything is give and take policy. So dear students, so my appeal to you is whatever you have gained, give it back to the society. Now coming to the TOSA. So many of you might have gained your knowledge or obtained or fulfilled all your ambitions because of TOSA. So now it's time to give back to the TOSA. That is how you can. So if you are at a good position and if you face particular problem, so or whatever the difference that you have seen within the campus and outside the campus, that thing you kindly interact with your juniors and share with them. And the problems that you have faced outside the campus, you train your juniors to face or to get ready with those problems, so that the problems that you have faced out of campus, they should not face it. And nowadays, I think because of this pandemic and other thing, getting a job is very, very difficult nowadays. Although a lot of jobs are available, people are not ready to move from one place to the other. So I appeal to my TOSA alumni that each one take care of them. So each one, as the Kiti Madam said, there are 362 students who have passed out from 4 batches of TOSA. Each one of you can take care of one junior, guide them properly, how to get ready with how to get ready to face the challenges of the outside world, and see that that one student that you are going to take care, he gets settled in his life. So with this, I thank the organizer for providing me an opportunity to interact with all the alumni. So I feel as if I am blessed because interacting with all the 4 batch students. Although I am very new to the Oxford family, but I'm lucky enough to interact with all the alumni of 4 batches, as if I feel that I have an experience of additional 4 years with me. Thank you one and all. That's all.
Thank you, sir, for those meaningful words. As you said, very correct. Education makes everybody a better human being. So what you should give back to your society, you should think. So give back to your family, give back to TOSA family, give back to your own environment. So I think he means be a good son, be a good daughter, or a friend, or a batchmate, anything. So see that you return something, what you have gained. So now I want everyone to see a short video on TOSA. I think many of you have seen also, but this is just to go back to your own school days, and hope you enjoy this video. Yeah, so that was about our college and how a day in a life of an architecture student. Yeah, so over to Madhurima.
So it was our journey to the college. A warm and hearty welcome to all our alumni to this event. Let me start by introducing our first presenter, architect Ritusha Nagaraj. Ritusha graduated from the Oxford School of Architecture in 2017 with University Gold Medal for the first rank. Recently, she completed her Masters in Landscape Architecture and got ASL Merit Award and FIU Faculty Award from Florida International University. Ritusha is inclined towards art also. She has received several international and national art and architecture awards. Let's all hear from her now. Over to you, Ritusha.
Thank you, Madhurima ma'am, for introducing me. Good afternoon, everyone, all teachers and students present here today. So I'm really happy to be back and be able to present a short presentation that I put together. So I thought I would share my work that I'm working right now, going by the topic, which is nature of landscape architecture in the subtropics. So I'm focusing, as I stay in close to Miami, and so we're in the subtropic region just like India. So I thought it would be really interesting to share, as we share the same or similar plant palette and the same style of landscape. So I thought it would be interesting to share. Just a little bit about myself, like ma'am introduced. I graduated as the first batch of TOSA in 2017. I did my internship in CCBA and DP Architects. And then after that, I worked as a junior architect in Verve group for 1 year. And then I went on to pursue masters in landscape architecture and urban design for about 2 years. And then after that, from 2020, I've been working as a landscape designer in Cochlear and Hearing here in Florida. So a little bit about Cochlear and Hearing. We mostly do projects related to urban design, planning, of course, landscape architecture, and transportation as well. So we're a team of about 50 people. So Cochlear and Hearing are the founders itself. That's Rob Cochlear and Don Hearing. So we do a lot of projects throughout the state of Florida and different from the East Coast to the West Coast of Florida. So I'll be sharing a small project that I've worked recently from, so I thought it would be a nice introduction to show you insights of what the practice of landscape architecture looks like in the US. So this is a project called West Lake. It's about 3,500 acres and it's the whole city is being designed by my office. So I had got a chance to work on it closely. So I'm just going to be sharing just one master plan project in this city. So that's called Pod H master plan. So I'm just showing you how we start off with the master planning. So as you can see, there's mostly just a road network laid out. So we begin with that and then we start developing everything phase wise. So you can see on the northeast corner, there's one parcel that's developed that's actually a petrol bunk or a gas station as they call it here. And then depending on the client and how they want to proceed and whoever has bought the land parcel, we go ahead. So then I got to work on the southernmost parcel, which is parcel E, which is actually a self-storage site. So here I'm just showing you conceptual sketches of how I got to work with the founder of this company and how he's a licensed landscape architect. So how he thinks about from planning to concept, and then we go into landscape. So this self-storage plan is actually a space where people can store their boats, caravans, or bigger vehicles they have. So it's just a large space where people can just store in this secured area, and they can just come and drop it and pick it up. So that's what a self-storage looks like. So here we were trying to first think of circulation, like how these large trucks with boats, how these cars which have caravans can come in and how they have to back in to park. And so there's a different understanding of mechanism of how they have to take space to turn about. So after we lay out the basic master plan and the site plan, we start understanding the footprint of the building. And once we lay out the basic footprint, we start going to conceptual landscape. So here you can see a lot of line work. Landscape actually has a lot of layers that we work with, because we have to think of from the ground level and up. So we start with ground covers, shrubs and trees, and then it gets a lot of layers into it. So we really have to define the symbols when we're doing even a simple sketch, so we can understand what's a tree versus what's a shrub and what's a ground cover. So this is what a simple detailed landscape plan looks like. So in this you can see that there's a lot of hatch involved for like a simple CAD plan. So as you try to zoom in, we try to tag every plant on the plan, and it's very important that we show in different hatch variations and different grading and different patterns, so it gets easier to understand. Otherwise it looks like a cluster. So we try our best to organize landscape in layers, and so we feel like layer management is really important, specifically when it comes to landscape, because we don't have any levels like in architecture that you can show it. So it's really important to keep them organized. So this is the final graphic representation of how it looks. So we actually don't just design based on what we feel. We have to understand a lot of codes that US and Florida state lays out. Like they're very strict about how you have to landscape around the buffer of the site. You have to have these many number of trees, and there should be a lot of privacy. Nobody should be able to barge in, and then you're supposed to have about 50 to 100 feet from the road. So there's a lot of easement. So basically you're designing to the code first, you're going by all their rules and regulations, and then you get freedom to work in their own space. So basically you're trying to match everything they have so that it gets approved. Otherwise they have really strict laws where you can't go ahead even with just a simple site plan without going by their set of rules. So this is just an overview of how the planning, from concept to planning and landscape, works on a simple project like this. So I'm just sharing with you a similar plant palette. Since India and even Florida, they lie in the same tropic and subtropic region, we share a lot of similar plants like the Ashoka tree, the Gulmohar tree, a lot of dates. So we categorize them into these basic 7 categories, where you have trees, you have palms, you have accents, you have shrubs, you have ground covers, you have littorals, and then you have the different kinds of grass. So littorals is basically planting around lakes, which is mandatory. So all of these are really important to consider, because these are different kinds of plants that require different amounts of sunlight, shade. They have different ways of growing. So it's really important to understand the kinds of planting palette we're using. Otherwise, whatever you might design might not work, or they might just die out. So it's really important to understand the science behind it. So this is just a small project that I wanted to share. So this is just another conceptual sketch that I wanted to share, which I thought was really interesting. So on the right hand side, you can see that there's so many colors. So just like in architecture, same works with landscape, we also think of the form and shape of the trees and how we try to create a focal point. So both of these sketches are for a community, so an entryway into a community. So how we try to create a focal point by using like vibrant plant palette in the front, and how we try to align trees that have a similar form and shape, which make it look linear as you enter. So there's a lot of form and function involved in landscape as well, which I didn't think it would be when I was doing architecture, because I always thought architecture paid a lot more attention to that and landscape was just beautifying it. But now I realize that landscape also plays a major role in it. So this is just like a simple sketch with my co-founder and my partners, and when I work with them, they always tell me that when we get architecture drawings, we're always trying to use trees and plants that accentuate the building, because you never want to overshadow the building, or you never want to use a really dominant tree or a plant that might just take away all the elevation that they've designed. So we're always trying to keep that and go with the flow of the architecture so that everything can be well balanced. So this was just a small project that I had. Yeah, so that's it. So if any of you people have any questions on landscape architecture or anything in general, feel free to reach out. I usually post all of my projects that I've worked on in my master's or even in architecture on my website. So feel free to reach out. I'm always willing to help you, and I always like to know what you guys are up to. If there's anything new, I'm always interested to know. So my email ID is my first name @gmail.com, and my website's my first name. So it's pretty simple. So reach out to me. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Sorry, I forgot to ask that.
Rucha, it's Ravi Kumar here, Director of Oxford College of Engineering.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Do we have any branch of your company in India?
No, it is just in Florida for right now.
If there is any sort of vacancies there, you can just announce that your juniors can contact you and try to move along with you into US.
Yes, definitely. If there's any opening in my company, I can let people, those are interested, I can let people know. Or if I come across anything that you people might be interested in, not just landscape or even architecture, I can always share anything from my end.
Thank you, Ritisha. It was really a nice presentation and very informative for our students. Our next presenter is Deepa Manak. Graduating in 2018, Deepa has recently completed Masters in Urban Planning from Faculty of Planning, CEPT University, Ahmedabad, one of the oldest and most prestigious universities for architecture and planning in India. Over to you, Deepa.
So, hi everyone. So, I did my bachelor's from Oxford. I passed out in 2018. So, after that, I joined CEPT University in Ahmedabad. In the year 2019, I started off with this. So, it's a very informal presentation. I just want to give you guys a gist of how CEPT actually works, so that if you guys are interested, you guys could join here as well. So, I have this presentation as my CEPT expedition. So yeah, like you all know, Ahmedabad CEPT University is present in Ahmedabad, and I'm sure most of you would have visited Ahmedabad through your North India trips, and that's how even I visited Ahmedabad for the first time. So Ahmedabad is a hub with lot of architectural monuments, not just from the history. So the images what I show you here is from my experience or the places that I would have visited during my Ahmedabad days or CEPT days here. So it is a place with lot of historical monuments like Circuit Rosa, latest architectural buildings like Mill Owners Association. I'm sure we all must have sketched this during our bachelors. And then not just this, it has a lot of infrastructure development in the city. We know the famous Sabarmati riverfront, and I think you guys must have seen this as well. So this place is not just a place of with good buildings and infrastructure. It's also where it has a lot of famous food joints. So it is the Manik Chowk in Ahmedabad, and not just for food. There's a lot of culture in this place. So we all know Garba is very famous in Gujarat. So through Garba, I got an opportunity to attend Garba in IIM Ahmedabad in 2019. So this is a very big list about how things are in Ahmedabad. So next, moving forward to our CEPT campus. Yeah, so talking about CEPT, so CEPT University, so it is the Sherenkin by Plaza where the CEPT Garba or the CEPT Midsem, whatever events has to happen, it will happen here in our open ground. You guys must have seen this campus when you would have come here. So it happens in the Sherenkin by Plaza, and then we have the Faculty of Architecture, which started in 1962, and I was a part of Faculty of Planning in CEPT University, which started in 1972. So 10 years later, Faculty of Planning started, and these are the formal spaces where we look for academics. Apart from that, we have a CEPT canteen and the North Lawn, where all the informal events that happen. Then a lot of interactions with our faculty and seniors or whoever comes to meet us there. Apart from this, we have the latest CEPT Fab Lab. So that's about people or the students, anyone could go there and they'll be given raw materials and machines. You can cut and make your own models or whatever things that you want to do as being a CEPTian. So that's about CEPT Fab Lab. So talking about my academics, so we started off with the foundation studio. That's in my first sem, where all the branches of Faculty of Planning work together. That is with infrastructure, transport, housing, urban design, and urban planning. All of us, were split into groups, and we had to survey the city of Ahmedabad on eastern side and western side. So we had to analyze the city and come up with some of the statistics and trying to know which part of the city is better. So that we did it through a foundation studio, and post that we were fortunately able to attend one of the winter school in Malaysia and Singapore. So in person, we went there to understanding the planning of those cities. Post that we came back, we had the winter exhibition that happened at CEPT campus. So we had to make huge panels and portrait works through that. Then in my second sem, I had to work on the development plan studio. That is the master plan studio. Previously, I showed you guys my work as well. So that happened, and in the third sem, things got online, and we had to work from our hometown. So fortunately, I was able to work on local area planning of Bangalore. So my focus was on Yashwantpur and Chandal Chowk metro areas. Post that, in my fourth sem, I was able to work on directed research project under our MUP chairman. So I had to work on the TDR, transfer development rights for Bangalore. So that was my academical profile in CEPT. So we had a lot of submissions. So what we did amidst the submissions were we tried to travel. So this year we were able to make small distance journeys. So we went to Kutch, Bhuj, and we were allowed to be on CEPT campus 1 week a day. So we went there. Whenever we went there, we tried to take pictures. And the last year we were able to go a little far. So that was Udaipur and Mount Abu. So that was about having the fun part. Apart from this, we also volunteered for the CEPT events or CEPT clubs. So I was a part of FP outreach team. So we have our Instagram pages for every department. So majorly I used to handle the FP CEPT page. You guys can check out for our works there. So come up with the FP newsletter where we post the events that happen in CEPT, and through the FP newsletter, a lot of recruiters, juniors, seniors, alumni, they try to know what's happening at CEPT right now, and even the people who would want to join later. So I would suggest you guys to follow these pages, these newsletters, to keep you, if you guys are interested in this, you guys can be updated through this. So there were a lot of informal events. So CEPT is a mixture of students from all over India. So we try to celebrate all kind of festivals there. So it was Onam, the famous CEPT Garba, where people from all over India come and visit this, including the alumni. And if since there are a lot of architecture students, they want to show their skills. So we decorate the campus with all the architectural, space making skills. Not just Garba, we did even celebrate Basant Panchami or the cultural nights at the North Lawn. And apart from this, some 90 students of us, we were about to go explore the Malacca, one of the ancient city in Malaysia. So talking about the events that happened on the academic side, there are a lot of exhibitions that keep happening, which give us a lot of knowledge. And there are midsum exhibitions. So this is from Faculty of Architecture, Faculty of Technology. And when it comes to Faculty of Therapy, we had to make huge posters where we show our mapping works. Here we can see at the bottom Dr. Bimal Patel, who is right now handling the Central Vista project at Delhi. He himself addressing us and teaching us about the planning. And the image at the bottom is my team with whom I worked for the Foundation Studio and did the survey for Ahmedabad planning. And like we are doing and having the alumni talk now, it happens at CEPT as well, where the greatest people from all over India who are a part of CEPT alumni come and talk to us and share their experience. So see, these are some of the events that happen at CEPT. So being a CEPTian, it was a very proud moment for me. So I was a part of FP batch 1920. So in 1962, there were a batch of people who sat like this and took pictures. So fortunately, I was able to be a part of the same image where some of the journalists came to our campus and asked us to recreate this. Then after a year gap, we were able to meet our friends. So it was very unfortunate. I lost 1 year of my master's online. But yeah, we did try to make it up, and meeting our faculty and being a part of Faculty of Planning and CEPT University was a great honor for me. So in case you guys are interested to be a part of CEPT or to do masters or interested in urban planning, you guys reach out to me anytime. You can find my contact number, email, or even on Instagram. So anytime you guys want to know about this, feel free to contact me. And if you guys have any questions right now, yeah, feel free to ask. Thank you.
So our next alumni is architect Rachna R. Prabhu. Rachna graduated from the Oxford School of Architecture with distinction and completed her MA from BMS College of Architecture, ranking second in a university. In 2019, she moved to the United States. She decided to use her time and power of experience to volunteer with non-profit organizations in Atlanta. Let us hear from her about her experiences. Over to you, Rachna.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. As ma'am rightly said, in 2019, I moved to Atlanta after I got married. For a couple of years now, I would say maybe 3 to 4 years, I've always wanted to volunteer, do something like how sir and ma'am was speaking about, give something back to the society. And I really never got the time to do it back when I was in India because I was studying. So when I came here, I came on a dependent visa that doesn't allow me to work for a couple of years. So I thought, I figured this would be the perfect time for me to, Google and find some organizations and dedicate my time for that. One thing I've realized is when you move to a new place, volunteering really helps you to meet new people. It helps strengthen your ties to the community. It also helps broaden your networks. You get to meet new people who share common interests, and you just get to do fun and fulfilling activities. So by doing a quick research, I found about 3 non-profit organizations in Atlanta that I'm currently volunteering at. One of them is called Grady's Fresh Food Cart. It is a hospital. It has multiple branches in Atlanta. So their main focus is to fuel our bodies and bind us together as a community with a renewed focus on health and healing. So what we basically do is, it is a bi-monthly activity where the hospital focuses on, it addresses food insecurity, where we provide access to fresh produce like fruits and vegetables to the hospital's most vulnerable patients and their families. So what we volunteers do is we collect all the fresh produce. It can be vegetables or fruits. So we collect them, we sort them out, and we distribute to the patients directly on site. So this happens in a couple of different branches all over Atlanta. So we do this twice in a month. So apart from this, when the COVID hit, I also was a volunteer for a month in a sewing volunteer group where we targeted about 3 to 4 old age homes, and we made cloth masks for all the old age people who lived there. So we did that, and overall there were about 10 women who joined, and we sewed the masks, and there were about 500 to 600 that we did in a month. So it was a collective effort. And after that, another organization that I work for is it's called Atlanta Humane Society, where there are different branches. One is medical. There are medical services. There's foster care department. But the one I work is vet daycare. So we take care of dogs and cats. So it's just dog walking, or we just basically help them in getting adopted. So it's a small work that I do maybe once a month. But it has now been stopped because of COVID. So they're not allowing volunteering so far. And another one that I work for, it's called Lost Cats of Georgia, where it's fully online, where we try to relocate lost pets, especially cats, small mammals and birds. So we do this online. We have a health panel where we make flyers and we send it to on Facebook. We update it on Instagram, and depending on the county where the pet has been lost, we have separate Facebook. We have separate Facebook groups and pages where we post them. And it was started in the year 2017, and about 1,300 pets have been they have reached back home safe. So I have been working in these organizations so far. So the one thing that I have realized doing this is it has given me an understanding of a sense of community, and doing something productive for the society, not expecting anything back in return, just gives immense happiness. I think it would do to anyone. And I would suggest that if you all have time, and if you, whenever you get time, or just, take some time out of your lives and do some volunteering on the side. And I assure you that you would really be happy when you do that. So that is it. But there's one thing that I would like to mention now that I'm talking to you all. I would like to actually talk a little bit about Pranoti ma'am, because I have known her for about 8 years now, and I would like to talk a little bit about her and things that she's been doing for our college. So the first thing is, the one thing that we have noticed is that she's trying her best to improve the TOSA ranking in terms of quality ever since she's joined. And I think in past 2 years, she has introduced quality monitoring systems in academics, and I'm sure you all agree to that. And I also think thesis monitoring and presentation have also gone under systematic schedules. And speaking about thesis monitoring, I had a personal experience with Pranoti ma'am, where I was doing my master's in BMS College, and during my thesis, I went to Pranoti ma'am for guidance, and she really helped me. She laid the foundation for me. I was really confused at one point, especially at the beginning. We all know how it gets during thesis. We get really confused. So I went to ma'am, and she helped me so much. She laid the foundation, and she really made me understand what I really wanted to look and what I was aiming for. And one thing I can guarantee you all is she does her best. If you have any problem, if you have any doubts regarding anything, and she's always there to support you guys. That's one thing I can assure you. And another one is she has also, the one thing you have realized is in the past 2 to 3 years that when she came in, she's organized a lot of webinars, special talks, and that was a lot lesser before, but when she came, she's doing her best to introduce all of them. And her office also sponsors awards and medals to top rankers. I personally had this experience too when I was in 5th semester. Ma'am took an initiative and she handed out awards, and we never knew that. And the fact that she appreciated us in the form of certificates or medals really made us happy. And I'm also very happy to see that TOSA got university rank this year as well. So it's a really good thing that our college is coming so far ahead. They have come a long way, and I hope we stay where we are right now. And thanks to Pranoti ma'am and all the other faculties.
Oh, thank you, Rachna. That was, I think, too much. I think the credit goes to other faculty as well. So yes. I think without team, nothing can happen. So I extend, I think I extend everything, whatever you've spoken. I think it goes to the entire faculty as well.
True.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for your kind words, and stay connected. Yeah. Over to Sabrina.
Thank you, Rachna, for your wonderful words and experience with us, sharing it. Our next presenter is Dhani Ruparelia. Graduating in 2017, Dhani is currently pursuing her master's in architectural design at the Bartley School of Architecture, University College London. Over to you, Dhani.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. Good afternoon. I'm Dhwani. I graduated from TOSA in 2017, after which I freelanced for a while and ran a startup briefly. Currently, I'm pursuing my Masters of Architecture at University College London. And I would like to present my ongoing thesis project to you guys right now. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So our thesis is called Fluid Wood. So the aim of our research is to focus on the aspect of multi-materiality while designing a programmatic hybrid for the King's Cross Western Concourse. We started off with analyzing the site and its surroundings based on different criteria to understand the scope of the project. While the surroundings are considered to be a knowledge quarter, the site itself is a major transport hub as it hosts a large nationwide as well as international footfall. Upon analysis, the idea was to redesign the Western Concourse with a structure that encourages a smoother urban flow across and around the site. The programmatic hybrid is intended to be achieved by the amalgamation of the knowledge hub, which refers to the workspaces, the transport hub, the retail hub, and open green spaces. As materiality plays a vital role in this research, we began with looking into the possibilities of using recyclable materials while also being mindful of the carbon footprint of the materials in question. While wood acts as a carbon sink, recycling plastic is considered to be energy efficient in comparison with other materials such as metal, glass, etc. due to its comparatively lower melting point. This brings us to wood plastic composites, which are effectively made out of wood and plastic, just as the name suggests. Moreover, based on various research papers, wood reinforced recycled plastic has resulted in the enhancement of the composite's mechanical properties. The use of wood plastic composites is rapidly growing around the globe. And this was clearly indicated in our brief market research. Hence, we intend to think ahead of the curve by deriving a methodology to recycle them. We ran a few material experiments with sawdust and used HDPE and PP to practically understand the behavior of the mixed material as compared to our research previously. After which, we dove into the process of fabricating 3D printable WPC filaments. Varying ratios of WPC with HDPE and PP were used with the intention of achieving filaments with varying opacities to then be able to 3D print a multi-material opacity gradient. For the design process, we studied a few WeWork offices and 3 important train stations in London. The design workflow includes running crowd simulations with respect to various times of the day, particularly in the peak hours. This information is stored using a pixel grid. These pixels that are affected by the crowd simulation are dedicated to circulation space, and the rest of the pixel clusters are used for program distribution based on the derivatives of the case studies done previously. Finally, the side boundary and boundaries of the pixel clusters allocated to open green spaces are used as anchor points to run a mesh relaxation to achieve a catenary shell. Crowd simulations were run a couple of times to achieve the maximum floor area ratio, and the structure was optimized for better structural performance, after which it was remeshed to achieve a triangular mesh in order to discretize it into blocks for the ease of fabrication and assembly. This was followed by a program-based material distribution to achieve close to ideal lighting for different spaces within. The light is intended to be controlled by the varying amount of wood reinforced in the blocks. The intention, as mentioned before, was to utilize recycled materials. The blocks would be 3D printed on site with the use of robotic arms. These would then be assembled by cranes under supervision. The idea is to use heat guns to weld the blocks together in place in order to achieve a hermetic seal. We 3D printed small-scale blocks to understand their behavior. More research and work on this project is currently underway, and I hope to share it with you all once it's been developed enough. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them to me right now or reach out to me later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dhwani. That was a very informative presentation.
Thank you.
Our next alumni is Marriott L.V. Robin. Marriott has completed her BR from TOSA in the year 2017 and is currently pursuing MSc in Urban Planning and Policy Design from the prestigious Politecnico di Milano, Italy. Over to you, Marriott.
Thank you so much for the introduction, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the faculty and staff for this opportunity to connect with fellow alumni. It really brings back a rush of memories and nostalgia. So today I chose to talk about my career paths because I remember being quite lost as a fresh graduate from Oxford among batchmates who were setting up their own offices, applying for masters, and really doing amazing things. It seemed like everybody knew what they wanted to do next. So with an amazing internship in a standard architecture firm, HCP in Ahmedabad, which is run by Dr. Bimal Patel, as Deepa had mentioned before, I had realized what I didn't want to do, but I also didn't know what I wanted to do. So my first job as a master planning executive at IDEC, a semi-government company in Bangalore, was really an eye-opener for me. IDEC, or its full form is Infrastructure Development Corporation of Karnataka. It operates parallelly with the government in tourism, energy, and infrastructure sector. So here I had the opportunity to handle tourism and infrastructure projects in Karnataka and in Jharkhand. My role was basically I went beyond my comfort zone here and made presentations in Kannada and in Hindi and explained why what we prepared or we proposed was really a step towards a better future for these cities. Let me take 2 seconds here to tell you this. If you can handle government clients, you really can handle anything in this world. There were times when I had traveled about 500 kilometers to meet a client on site. And I remember him calling my manager and asking her why she was sending kids over to the site. As a young architect, it was really it was confusing to me. So I remember my boss, the amazing lady she is, she put me in full charge of that project from that day on, and she handled the situation so well. And then this client was forced to deal with this kid for 6 months. So when the experience comes with so many challenges, you can never really get bored of it. From that day onwards, I really knew that I wanted to handle government clients, henceforth, irrespective of the context, of course. And 2 years into working here, I felt the need to learn more, to be able to give more, and also to be able to expect more in return. I mean, you know what I mean. I wanted a raise. So that's when I took up Masters in Urban Planning and Policy Design at Politecnico di Milano in Milan. And this experience has been such an eye-opener and so informative, so educative. I specialize here in infrastructure design, spatial planning, master planning, and energy efficient urban planning. This was where I learned the real power of an urban planner. What are the factors to be considered in planning a city? What are the mistakes made in the past? How can those mistakes be rectified today? How Bangalore was never prepared to expand as fast as it has expanded today? How complicated it really is to make a metropolitan city of a garden city. I was also introduced to the magic of Geographic Information System, or GIS as it's commonly known as. The fact that we can track comfort, discomfort, heat islands, cool islands, the needs of citizens based on their age, their occupation, their hobbies, and lifestyle in order to plan a better city for them was mind-blowing to me. But I also secretly missed handling government clients. So here I am now. I'm currently interning at Chic Investment Group, a company that handles infrastructure and urban development projects for the government of China and Italy. It operates very similar to IDEC, so I really enjoy what I do over here. I've been working on promoting the concept of 15-minute cities. The 15-minute city is an urban strategy that creates neighborhoods where everything a resident needs can be reached within 15 minutes by foot, bike, or public transit. And it focuses on reducing the need to travel and avoiding the addition of costly infrastructure, transport infrastructure, in a losing battle against traffic congestion, something we see in cities like Mumbai and Bangalore currently. So right now, I'm convincing the Chinese government why they should look into designing 15-minute neighborhoods in upcoming Chinese cities, and I absolutely love it. At this point, my advice to graduates who could be possibly lost like I was would be to go ahead and take the plunge, try things you haven't done before, and only then you would be able to discover what you truly love doing. Also, if there's anybody interested in pursuing masters in Italy, I would like to tell you that I've written in detail about the admission procedure. I'm just going to share my screen with you and you can have a look. I have a website, and it's called Girl with Phonemes. It's easy to find. There's a tab called Masters Abroad, and under that I have written everything in detail. There's common questions, there's the visa procedure, the scholarship that I use, how to apply, and even how to crack IELTS. And under professional, you can go have a look in my portfolio and you can see what I do as an urban planner here. And on that note, yeah, I'd like to conclude, and I'm available for questions. You can really approach me. I will share my email ID with you, and you can also comment on any of these posts in my website, and I'm available. Thanks, guys. Thank you to the faculty, and thank you to all the teachers.
So our next alumni who will share her experience is M. Sneha. Graduated from the Oxford School of Architecture, presently pursuing her Masters in Urban Design. Also the founder and principal architect of Urban Courtyard, an architecture and interior design firm that runs on the motto of inclusive design solutions that concentrate on how nature would be included in everyday space we use. Over to you, Sneha.
First of all, good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for having all of us here. It's been really long time we actually saw each other. So as the first batch of Oxford, it was a great experience. Of course, we had our ups and downs, but then we had the best teachers, and also our classmates. We all actually had a very great time. After I graduated from Oxford, I went on. I was working as an intern in Hyderabad, and I continued to work with that firm. So I was in Bangalore, but still I used to go and work in Hyderabad for a certain amount of time. And After that, I wrote my CET and I was doing freelancing, and then I got into masters. And right now, I'm in the final thesis semester. In this process of studying masters or getting into urban design, it basically taught me personally that a road is much more than what you see. A neighborhood is something more than what you see. And between all this, I also worked as an assistant professor in an interior design college. And for me, the fact of being associated with teaching is very interesting, and I always wanted to be a lecturer. So in this urban design and teaching profession, I try to find a common space where people are always worried about what they don't have, and we hardly look into our surroundings, and we hardly appreciate what we have. So urban design is all about taking care of smaller spaces or smaller things. Like even a single plant on the road is very, very important, or for that matter, a divider on the road is very important. So all such tiny realizations that happened was during this process, and I'm very grateful that I chose urban design. So in this projects that we handle in urban design studios, one of it was conservation, or that was something related to conservative sites or ASI sites. So all the sensitive areas. Our area of study was Hampi, and like when we go on and study about such historical sites or such historical places, you go as a tourist, you go to that place, you see that place, you say, wow, such nice, beautiful places. You click pictures and then you come back. But when we went as urban designers, I'm telling this because I had visited Hampi twice before I went on the study tour. So when I visited Hampi as an urban designer, the scene was completely different. I never felt like standing in front of the monument and clicking a picture, but I wanted to know why that monument is there, what is the importance of it, and why the stone is carved in certain way, and why people are so attached to that monument, or why haven't people moved away from there even after so many years, because they don't have basic facilities also in certain areas. Even then, people are so grounded. They do their work. They're happy with their income. They all know each other. They celebrate all the festivals together, and they're happy. So this actually put in a thought that why is it that we people living in cities in such big houses with so much of infrastructure that we have, why is it that we are still not happy and we keep cribbing about everything? We go to the road, we start riding our vehicles, we say the government has not done anything for the road, and then we don't have water for a day, we start blaming PWSS, and we don't have power for 1 hour, we start blaming Westcom people. But when you go and have a look at people who are staying there with such less facilities, there are so many houses that doesn't have 24/7 water supply. They have to go all the way to the river, get water, and then filter it and then drink. So the whole process of joining masters, for me it was a very life-changing experience, and I think any person who is interested in bringing a change in the society, or bringing a change in people's psychology or what people think, I think urban design gives you a very good platform, and you should give it a try. There is a subject in 7th semester as an elective of urban design. If you want to know what it is, you can choose it, and you can go ahead with it in your masters as well. So there's a lot of things that happen in urban design, and also apart from my academics, I have been doing public talking. I have been educating people about the importance of heritage and how it influences our everyday life. I have been a part of NGOs, and I've participated in many talk shows. So that is for now, because anyone who is looking into a career or who is looking into getting into masters, urban design is definitely a good solution or a good place to learn a lot in 2 years. So yeah, thank you for giving this opportunity. And if you want to connect with me, you can always connect with me on Instagram. That's in the name of Sneha Manjunath. And also, I run a firm, Urban Courtyard. So I am luckily happy that even in lockdown, I didn't face much of a problem. So right now, I am actually hiring people for work. So if you are really interested, or if you know who is in need of help, you can always contact me on Urban Courtyard as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and yeah, nice meeting everybody here.
Thank you, Sneha, for sharing your thoughts and experiences. Our next
Thank you, ma'am.
presenter. Our next presenter is Sean Phillip from the 2013 to 2018 batch. He has been a promising student in top ranks. Sean has been working at RC Architecture Bangalore since 2018. Over to you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for this opportunity. I think it's really grateful to see a lot of people coming and presenting. So first of all, I congratulate all the rest of the presenters and people who gave talk about their experience. And I'm happy for the faculty to take this initiatives, especially during this lockdown, to make it more productive for the people. So I will just share my screen. So I'm currently working in RC Architecture. I did my internship there and I got trained. So all my skills are basically, it has been grown from RC Architecture itself. So I would talk on mostly behalf of corporate architecture and how it actually has been growing. So once I joined hope you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, so I just want, so the whole topic which I came up with is to set out a radical vision for the future of trends in corporate architecture and design. So in corporate architecture, mostly people have a lame idea that, okay, it's just to make money and there's nothing much. But I think once I did my internship and started handling projects, it was actually a totally different level. The kind of trends, especially being in Bangalore, I think the kind of software companies, the lot of startups coming in. So I think this kind of a trends architecture profession can be uplifted. So anybody who would not have an idea of, as an architect, you start with the residence design. So that's what most of them think. But I think uplifting more than that is a greater thing to stand up in the market. So the two questions which I feel people should think about is first thing, how architecture profession can be uplifted. So everybody might do the same thing. So you see a lot of people, architects, some people are not graduated, but they wouldn't have had a degree, but still they do as an architect's job. So how do you stand up among so many people? Something different, but you still follow the design trends or the design attitude, you take it further. The second question is about the current pandemic. So I would talk on the slides. What I have presented here is mostly related to office architecture and how architecture and interior design go together, how they can be collaborated. So the first thing is how workplace design affects human behavior. So everything, I think when we started our BR, we start with anthropometry. So everything starts with people, environment, and the context you do. So the same thing happens in any kind of architecture project. So this is when you design a workplace, it's the same thing. So you have a formal atmosphere, the kind of job people do, it would all vary totally differently. But the kind of spaces, like a conference room you need some kind of a collaborated space. All those things are the same. So you do the same activities, but the function could be slightly different. So I have learned a lot within this 3 years working in RC Architecture, how the clients come up with their own set of ideas and how the trends have changed based on the human behavior. So the main thing is reimagining spaces through collaboration. So once I go into the next slides, you will get to know better. So even in a normal architecture project or an interior project, you start with human-centric. So you start with for whom are you going to design? You get to know that first. So it's for the people. So the main thing has to be human-centric. So the facade design, the kind of aesthetic importance I think it's totally gone as per my perspective. So you start with the kind of a function and for whom you design it. And the environment you create is what the person is going to experience it. And sustainability is, as of now, I think being in Bangalore or kind of a metropolitan city, you try to incorporate this word where you try to convince the client like it's going to be a LEED rated building or a sustainable building. So, but I think we could take it much more in a better way by collaboration with consultants. Even before the scratch of your design, you could think about how efficiently your building can stand in the city like this. So during the pandemic, there was a concept of social distancing, which we try to incorporate even in our office designs. But we try to convince the client telling that this is something which would be relevant, where you have a lot of open spaces, which even last year, even before COVID pandemic or something like that, we try to incorporate the same, but we try to bring in more value by using the word social distancing. But I think again, the clients were like, this pandemic might go later, but the kind of quality people are looking is what I have highlighted in yellow. It's called wellness. So people are working from home, and they're still, even when they come back to office, they want to get that kind of an atmosphere, like a home atmosphere, like a hospitality feel. They would not like to put a full stress into their work, rather than just kind of an exploration which they would like to receive. So this data you would not require to understand. So I would talk about how the trends have changed through decades. So the same thing can be incorporated even in architecture. We started with, like you see Philip Johnson's building, where you have just glass buildings. That was something trending during those days. But how you try to bring in more, how do you try to change the design thought based on the trends? So 1960s, it was about the cubicles which we had. So people they wanted a private cabins for themselves. So they never thought about how ventilation should be an important factor. So the glass and concrete came in between, where you wanted to feel the high tech of it. So you talk about software companies, it's about the glass building, the concrete structure. And so that started in 1990s and 2000s. If you see, the open plan offices and co-working concepts came. So people do a study. So there are a lot of people who make a study of how efficiently and productivity is more important for a work culture. So especially a software company, when we talk to the clients, they feel like people should do it efficiently. It's not a matter of working for 8 to 10 hours. So the kind of technology has developed, it's smart. So now you use laptop. So the co-working space, so in 2010s and 2030s, it's more like you're going to use laptops, or you want to have a screen interaction. You would not sit in front of a desktop mostly. So they wanted that kind of an experience given to so they gave a lot of importance. So at present, they give a lot of importance to the employees. So that client itself takes an interaction. So something called a biophilia. So they, especially in Bangalore, you'd get to see a lot of empty buildings which they rent out the clients. You would never see a outside surrounding with a lush green now. Maybe earlier we could see, but now they try to recreate within their office space something like a biophilia. So you try to create some kind of an open plan system where you try to have a landscape. So the next slide which I talk about is about the traditional, moving away from traditional office to a more dynamic and natural environment. So you see two images here. One is the outside landscape which they are trying to create. That's one sort of way, but there are spaces where you don't have a lot of space for landscaping outside. So you bring the outside in. So you try to create the environment inside with the same torches. So the whole experience, whole slides presentation, what I'm trying to tell is how architecture and interior can go well together. And if you see this slide, so I'm slightly hurrying because of the 10-minute slot. So maybe later we could get into know more about in detail. So this 4 images which you see, the first one is in residence and the second next to it is a corporate office. So you get to see how the same importance as a residential design is given to an office space, where the people has to feel comfortable when they deliver their product. And the second 2 images which you see, a courtyard. So that's a concept which was derived from the ancients, and still we feel like we need it. We don't have a setback around your site where you need to recreate a courtyard within your building. So that's how you try to use concept of residential design even in a corporate design. So these are some of the trends which I try to research from internet, where we also try to keep up to the market. So one is the flexibility. So we didn't want a cubicle space, what I told, which has changed now. It's more about flexibility. They would like to go and sit in a lawn. They want to sit on a water body, next to a water body and discuss something. So immediately they want to arrange a meeting. So that's about collaboration. And biophilic is something where people do a lot of study on to understand how much of oxygen is required, how to keep mental stability, the stress, how to balance the stress for the people, and the technology. So because of the technology changes, that itself is adding a value to the architecture and interior of the space. So the main, I think, to conclude it is how to responsibly design a project. So I think I felt like corporate architecture is something which I feel like it's trending for me, and I would still focus on that. I think it's something different what I try to do. And if anybody think corporate company is something which you don't get to learn, it's actually, I don't think it's the right way of thinking, but it's actually you're uplifting your trend or your fashion into your profession, into more directly into the market. You have been put out to great executive clients, and you can stand out of the market soon. I think that's all. But yeah, to just thank, like I think Rachana mentioned, Pranati ma'am has been, I think with the guidance of the other faculty also, they've been doing really great at this kind of a work. We are trying to, I thought after TOSA is done, I think it's done. So, but Pranati ma'am has never taught me, but she still keeps, we are in touch, we keep in contact. And I think a lot of many people are there within our batch who actually are doing wonderful jobs. I think we should set a lot of presentations like that as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sean. It was really a very informative presentation. Now let us welcome Smeta M, graduating in 2018. Sweta is an architect working in the social sector with a passion for design education. She leads design at Antil Creation, an NGO that aims to bring back play through sustainable playgrounds and indoor play for children in underprivileged communities. She is also a program designer and facilitator at Unbind, an organization that focuses on creating learning experiences in the design sector. Over to you, Sweta.
Thank you, ma'am. I get to really share the things that I've been exposed to, or the things that I've been doing ever since Oxford happened. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yes.
So design in the social sector is something that intrigued me from a very long time, and this happened because I was conducting rural immersion programs where we were interacting with fresh graduates and students and trying to help them understand how, as designers, you can actually impact the society. So my interest started there, and now I'm working for Antil Creations, like ma'am said. So I'll just kind of take you through what design really means in the social sector and how we can really contribute and how we can learn from the society. And then as I go on, you will see some of the projects that I'm working on as well. Yeah, so I think one of the things that really stood out for me was in the social sector, you're kind of designing without a client, right? And when I say without a client, what I mean is design becomes a response to a certain situation than somebody coming and approaching us and saying, hey, you know what, I need this to be fixed or I need this to be designed. But you become the lens and you are looking at a certain situation and assessing it to understand how your design skills can contribute to a positive change. So at Antil Creations, the backstory is that it was started by like 5 IIT alumni architects who saw like a bunch of kids around their campus. They were playing with a concrete tunnel that's left over from construction. And then they realized that these kids are going and playing with stones and glass pieces are all around, and these concrete tunnels might have steel wires. So it's not really a safe environment for a child. And then they realized how important it is for a child to play, because we all talk about education in schools, but play is such an integral part of a child's development. And that's when we started, Anthill Creation started. And another aspect that they found relevant was to take the sustainability part of it, right? So we started using tires and recycled materials to build these playgrounds. So the vision of the organization again is to bring back play by making it accessible to all. So this doesn't mean, this means that we go into government schools and or even isolated communities and set up play spaces there, because the children in those communities are the ones who don't have access, on a daily basis. They're not privileged, right? So, and play is not a luxury. Play is a necessity. So, which is why we went to government schools and communities. So again, thinking about the whole sector, we can really talk about participatory planning, which is where you're talking to different stakeholders involved. And the stakeholder becomes a designer, becomes a builder, and becomes the owner of the space, right? Because I think one of the most important things about building in a public space is building ownership. And you can go and set up this amazing structure and then come back. But then what happens to that structure after that, right? So you need to create awareness and build ownership in the surrounding communities so that they will take care of the place. And to do that, you have to include them from the design process. So that's why I say, participatory planning, which is them being from the, choosing the site, asking them what they really want, and making sure they are involved in the construction process as well, becomes very, very important. And in Anthill Creations, we're doing this through the community surrounding a certain school. Like, for example, if we went to the outskirts of Bangalore or even any other, we've done projects in Northeast, completely isolated areas. So we will look for laborers around that space, and we will look for community members to come and head the entire project. So that way you're building in ownership, and you're also building skills for them, something that they can take forward. Yeah, and another way is one of the stakeholders that we work with in the social sector are corporates because of the CSR aspect. And so we include corporate, the employees to come and paint our playground, to come and build the playground, so they understand how much it takes for a child to have access to play, and why it's important that people in privileged positions also contribute to whatever extent they can. And so this is just one of the projects we've done at Jakkur Lake in Bangalore. And this was through participatory planning because there were so many other NGOs and other organizations involved. So the people who are taking care of the lake will also give us input on what kind of materials we should use or what kind of equipment we have to use so that the children and the public can engage with. And this is another project in West Bengal. So this was completely built and painted, everything including the community members surrounding. And you can see it's a pretty isolated space, right? But it's interesting how the design skills that we pick up in college, because of architecture, I think is a wonderful foundation course. So it's not just about designing buildings, and so many of them have spoken today. It's about urban design and landscape, and there are so many aspects that you can really develop your skill in that is just not limited to say 4 walls, right? This is a playscape at Agra Lake in Bangalore again. And so we've worked with a lot of corporates like PNB Housing, Salesforce, KPMG, a lot of people. So in the sense, you also improve your networking, like Sir was talking about, networking and sharing those skills. And it's just the sharing of knowledge that makes the social sector very enriching for me. And yeah, innovation. So this, I think, is a question because when we talk about the social sector, it's a stigma to say, okay, you will be working in an NGO or a non-profit and you will have to do the same thing over and again, or you will just go and distribute things. But innovation is really a very, very important aspect. And when you talk about innovation, you can talk about materials and you can talk about methods, right? So I'll just show you what I mean by this. This is one example of a playground where we use the pipe tunnels, right? And the pipe roll barrels. So these barrels were used as climbers, and this was available in the community around, and we said, okay, why should that go for waste? But the fact that if this was on the roadside, you wouldn't see anybody near it. But if you just put it in a certain space and you create that kind of environment, it becomes a wonderful play space for the children. So even in the background, you can see we've used old barrels and the pipe. Basically these are barrels that hold the wires. And this is another example. For this, we built like a ship. This is in Mumbai. It was a very recent project. And what you actually see on the other view, when you stand on the ship, you're looking at the sea. And the initiative for this was taken by RPG Foundation, which is a corporate. And they wanted to really create something completely innovative, something that you don't see anywhere. And and this was in the midst of a slum. So again, creating access to play in different kinds of communities is something that's very, very interesting for me. And before I go to this, some of the challenges that you have, right? So one project that I'm currently working on is creating a play space for children with muscular dystrophy. And these children, you can look up on what muscular dystrophy is. It's a very sad, it's a disease, and it's a very bad situation. So you creating designs where children are safe, where they can't really take even 5 steps a day, right? So how do you make those children play? How can you create a space where they can learn and still be comfortable and feel good about themselves? So you have many challenges like this depending on who you're really working with. And we're also designing a dog park. So even for dogs, we're trying to create a certain play space where both children and dogs can kind of come together and play. And so a play in a box, again, talking about innovation. So when the pandemic hit, right? So schools obviously were closed and children they sat online for classes. But the core of playing is the physical development. So how does one get physical development while you are at home, when you can't really go to playgrounds? So we came up with this initiative called Play in a Box, where we created a set of 5 to 6 games inside a certain box, and we went and distributed these boxes to children in underprivileged communities. And we realized that they really need it because education needs to continue, and in such communities they don't have access to high-speed internet, right? Not everybody has a phone, not everybody has a computer. So and not every government school really does classes online. So how do you ensure learning, ensure happiness quotient and holistic development while they are at home? Designed a set of these games, and each of these games are addressing a certain skill, some from physical, cognitive, motor skills, social development, emotional development, and all of these games go into one box. Again, this was a very, very interesting project, and we are still innovating here, trying to come up with new games. This is one of the most recent game. It's called Numbo Jumbo, and this game is about using numbers and learning arithmetic progression. So this is for the slightly older age group, but this was a project that I worked on from scratch, and it was very, very. It was a very steep learning curve. And this is a project called Play Ed, and this is again another innovation. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of BALA, which is a concept created by Kabir Vajpayee. It's called the abbreviation stands for Building as a Learning Aid. And what Building as a Learning Aid does is they use the existing parts of infrastructure. It could be the doors, walls, ceiling, flooring, fans, windows, and they try to convert these into teaching and learning aids. Right? The concept is that a child spends up to 6 hours in a school, but why does the teacher have to be the only source of learning? Why can't the building itself teach the children? And so this concept really stuck with me, and I think this is by far one of the most passionate projects I'm working on. And so some of the designs, I'll just run you through some things that I've done. So this is like a simple classroom, and right now we're working with the Thoothukudi government to do this in a set of 5 schools as a pilot. And we're trying to reach out to different governments as well, so that such classrooms can enrich every single government school. And each child has access to quality education and a quality learning experience, if you ask me. So this is just some of the designs. For example, this happens in the aisle of the classroom, right, between the 2 rows. So this becomes these are panels made of like sustainable material, which is Tetra Pak panels. And while the child walks from their bench to the teacher, there's an agility trail. So along this dotted line, the child can walk, and that way you're creating balance and physical development. And while doing so, the days of the week are also printed on that panel. So not only are they developing balance, they're also learning something just by walking from their bench to going to the teacher. So it might seem like very small interventions, but such interventions are really going to make a difference because this is something they see repeatedly. And emotion boards are another one where this happens on the parapet, right? So on corridors, just the parapet of the wall are converted to such boards. So on one side of the board, you have a certain emotion. So if the child says, okay, I'm feeling angry right now, and then they flip the board and they can say, okay, what should I do when I'm angry? I should not, what should I do is maybe I should take some time alone. And what should I not do? I should not go and hit somebody, right? So we are also teaching social skills, communication skills through such interventions. This is another example. I don't really need to explain it. So on the riser, you have tables written or any other, knowledge piece. And as they're using the steps every day, this just registers in their mind. Yeah, so apart from innovation, measuring impact becomes like one of the major parts of the social sector, right? Because you can do all these interventions, you can build these buildings, you can, teach people, but how do you know if you're really making a certain change and if that change is a positive change or not? So measuring impact is something that I found very interesting, while learning here. And in Anthill Creations, we do it in 3 aspects. So social, economic, and ecological. So when you say social, it's about the cognitive and physical development for the children, and interactive learning and community involvement. Economic, because again, given that we are a not-for-profit, there are no multi-crore projects, right? Yet, at least. So the budget is less. So within that budget, how do you work? So we created very easy DIY designs. So all of our designs are open source and anybody can just pick up the design and go and build a playground themselves. And we had to come up with joineries and fixtures which were easily can be constructed. So for example, our typical playground takes about 5 days to complete. Right? So obviously if you compare it to like a building project which takes anywhere from a year to multiple years. So this is like super quick because it has to be again to cut down labor costs and different costs. And ecological, so sustainability forms a major part of us. Even in Planer Box, we don't include any plastic material. We only use recycled material or sustainable materials like wood, and some amount of metal is needed because of like stability and structure. But mostly we deal with tires, which was again a very steep learning curve for me on how a simple tire can be used in multiple ways. And and another thing that happens again in the social sector is the connections, right? So for example, as we speak, in Haiti, somebody reached out to us and they wanted to build a playground. So although we won't be able to go to Haiti and build it for them, just by sharing knowledge and sharing our expertise, they are able to set up this playground in their school, which is very exciting. And another, even in Pakistan, the same thing happened. We were just virtually helping them and they set up a playground themselves. So yeah, that was like in brief about what the social sector really has in store. And like how Rachna said, like just giving back to the society. Like for me, just watching that child smile when he or she is playing on that playground, I think it gives me all the satisfaction I need to kind of justify or to validate my choice of getting into the social sector. And architecture or any design skill, it really, really helps. And there's so much you can do by just simply using your skill. So yeah, if anybody is interested in getting on the social sector journey, do reach out. I'd love to just have a chat or anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta, for the wonderful and very informative presentation. Our next alumni is Abhilash R from the 2015 to 2020 batch. Since then, Abhilash has been involved in freelancing work. We welcome him to share his experiences with us. Over to you, Abhilash.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sabrina, ma'am. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Abhilash R from TOSA 2020 batch of architecture. Firstly, I thank everyone who has given me the opportunity to talk a few words about myself and my experience at college. And I thank my faculty and friends who have helped me the most. And I especially thanks my faculty and my thesis guide Anupa ma'am, who has helped me in pursuing my architecture without any complications. To begin with, with the first question that arises when I attend my first lecture at my college, why did you choose architecture? So many would have heard of this question already. So back then the answer was that some choose architecture because they hated maths, some choose because they were good in sketching, and some because they wanted a different field to pursue. But now, after 5 years of pursuing architecture, the answer has changed. I am very glad that I chose architecture because I love the idea of being able to create spaces that people can interact with each other, that can really affect one's mood and give them good feelings and peace of mind. In fact, what we design, it impacts a lot. It just not impacts a person, it impacts a group of people, a community, a family, and it can also impact an entire nation in some cases. Each nation will have its own architectural heritage, and so is our power to design. And from where I began in my first sem, by failing in a subject, and to where I am now in the top second position of my final thesis project, shows my journey of improvisation and how capable and independent I have become during the course of time. In fact, I wanted to present my thesis at college in front of the jury panel and my friends because I had worked the most on my thesis than any other project in my academics under the guidance of my thesis guide Anupama. But unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 restrictions in the city at that time, we had to do it online. Even online jury session also went really well. The organization of that structure was really good. I am extremely grateful to my teachers for giving me such wonderful, creative and challenging assignments, which has framed me into a right person that I ought to be. In fact, the teachers gave their heart and probably a part of their personal life during the course of time to make us better people. And that is why I would like to extend my gratitude not to just my teachers, but to all the teachers who are present here on behalf of all the students. But again, during my college studies, I just focused on my duty without thinking about the rewards. It has helped me a lot. It has helped me to not be anxious before any exam or jury. In fact, that character of mine now has been helping me in taking more interviews from many other companies that I apply for. And I am thankful to my teachers for making us conscious and maintaining perfect time in submitting assignments. So this timing by making schedules will help us serve our clients better in the future, by keeping up the time. Apart from academics, there were many other activities such as sports events and academic tours, 4 academic tours where we enjoyed to the fullest. And those were the memorable days of my life at college. Throughout my time at college, I have been respectful and nice to my teachers and fellow students, and so they have to me. My seniors and friends, in fact, many best friends, have helped me the most in my tough times. So I am really grateful to them. For all of us, our canteen and back gate were the most beautiful, colorful, and awesome places that we miss the most. Isn't it, guys? Yeah, yes, all of us do miss those. And these were the places where we enjoyed the most of our time at college. Though teachers had a very bad experience at that time. We used to bunk classes to go there. College has been a beautiful experience. Thank you all for making it so pleasant and pleasurable. Thank you everyone. I am honored to be here, and congratulations to all my fellow students on their graduation. Being an architect has been a dream for so many, and even for myself. And today we all have fulfilled that dream and achieved something that will be with us for the rest of our life. And it will help us pursue our careers in our own passion. Architects only get to choose. We work what we study. In fact, many engineers, they don't have that choice. So we love what we do. And finally, congratulations to all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhilash. It was good learning experience to see the presentations and hear about your experience from all our alumni. Now we shall felicitate the winners of the TOSA Awards 2020. Please join us in applauding their achievements. Pranati ma'am, over to you.
Since the pandemic started in 2020, we all have been confined to our surroundings and we have not been able to meet new people or have new experiences other than maybe staying inside for longer periods of time. So same goes for our current students as well. But at the same time, we have seen that the internet has become a global platform for interaction. Hence, we are keeping some 10 minutes as an interactive session. Any alumni who would like to share their experiences, students who would like to interact with the alumni, as well as faculty who would like to add in a few words about their teaching experiences, are welcome to do so.
Yeah,
But since
we'll keep it short.
Yeah, but since we have limited time, we request you to keep it
And those who
short.
want to have more information can always get connected through their mails or Insta pages. Yeah. Anyone?
At the same time, I would request you to raise your hand first before speaking so that we don't have any confusion regarding the same. Anyone would like to interact?
And yeah, before I forget, I just want to, your medals are here, if you can see. I think they can always be collected from the college office, the winners, and even we have certificates as well, which can be collected from the college office.
I think Sean wants to interact. Sean has raised his hand. Please go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give some inputs, like especially when in our office when they're looking for interns, and I try to get people from Oxford College. I'll be like, I'll speak to my juniors and get the portfolio, because our office, first thing from an intern, what do they expect? It's only through a portfolio which they'll be able to understand and just select them. So only thing I have tried doing that for at least 1 or 2 batches, only 1 or 2 people give it on time. So only thing, maybe the faculty should just encourage them to be prepared for with their portfolio, not just waiting for their thesis to get over, and just be ready with their portfolio and just apply it, because at the end, most of the time in our office, it's the BMS students who actually do it in the earlier stage, and it's obvious that BMS, they just categorize them as the best. And so we could actually, I was trying to promote from my batch itself, 2 people had joined in our office, but later from the juniors batch, it's very rarely that I get to see, because people are very late by the time they start applying for the internship. So I think they should all be prepared well in advance about the portfolio.
That's a very valuable input. So I think you should always keep your portfolio ready so that you get the best firms to apply, and they also have time for selection. Yeah. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
And the meanwhile, I think I would appreciate faculty also to share their experiences. I mean, in case the student, none of the students are interested to ask. I mean, I think someone else has raised the hand. No.
No, ma'am. It's just Sean. Thank you, Sean. Anyone else?
Yeah, let's move on. I think we can always ask faculty to share their experiences. I think they have done in initial years. I think all have faced hardships, so I think they know the students very well. So any faculty, please come forward and share their experiences, or even any suggestions, advices for the current batch.
I'm really happy to connect back to my own students, and glad to note that they are all serving our society in different ways. I thank all the alumni who have gathered here and shared their thoughts on various topics. I wish the current students also to follow their path. I would like to wish all the very best in their future endeavors. Thank you. Thank you all, my dear alumni students.
Thank you for having us, ma'am. It was great pleasure to be part of this.
Yeah, any faculty?
Yes, any faculty Any student who would like to talk to the alumni or who would like to share a few experiences?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Can I speak for a while?
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to listen to all the alumni, and the fact that they are enjoying the course is a great thing. And some of you have also gone in to the extent of shifting so vastly away from what they were aspiring to or dreaming as a white collar job. But certainly they have enjoyed the drift also, and it's nice to hear that they are still proud of enjoying the course, I should say. That itself is a big thing, and I should say my personal experience, soon after graduation, there was a recession, and I had to teach at a school. But certainly, I enjoyed teaching fine arts there, and there were social interaction with parents and even many other NGOs that used to come out there. They helped in a great way, in the sense some projects do come out from those people who have interacted with you, and certainly interacting with people and society is how you can give it back to the society. So with these few words, I would like to certainly encourage all of you to give back, and with thanks, I should say, give back with thanks to the society that has given so much of good things to you, and so much of their time and experience was shared to you. So you have to give back to the society all the best that you can offer to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Benisa.
I think yeah.
Over to you, Madhurima ma'am. Yeah.
Now we request all of you, those who are present in the meet, to switch on your video camera for a quick photo session, please.
The photo session. I would like to speak a few words.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhilash, for your thanks message. It was a wonderful learning experience guiding you for thesis, and all the best to the 2020 batch. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll meet you all.
Yeah, and I think I want to request Dr. Ravi Kumar to share what his experience about, and because I'm sure this college School of Architecture is new for you. You've been teaching in engineering colleges, so I would like to know your experiences from this. Yeah, just a few words. Yeah.
As one of the alumni said, engineering is very difficult for them to continue with the same profession. For example, those who have done mechanical, very rarely they go in the field of mechanical. They learn software and push their profession. But the same, and they could learn from all the 9 alumni who have spoken. Have all the names written along with their designation. In future, I may contact them for progress or for the movement of our institute one level to the other. That in the architecture itself, in the syllabus itself, the service is involved. So, whatever the work it may be as one of the alumni in USA, Florida, one in Atlanta, and one running their own company, and one working in a social sector. But whatever they are doing, same everything in one way or the other is benefiting the society.
Yeah, very good.
That's right. We say, Deshabhakti Raktadala ide, we say Kara. So here in the architecture, it shows within the students, the service is engaged. So I thank all the team including principal, HOD, staff, all the alumni for continuing this service and continue this and see that your seniors are also involved in that and they let them contribute to the growth of the business. Best of luck for all of you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Can we have a quick photo session? Everybody, those who are here, please come online. Please switch on your cameras. Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you. On behalf of all, I would like to thank our Honorable Chairman, Sir, Director Amarnath Sir, Director Ravi Kumar Sir, and the management of Oxford Group of Institutes for giving us the opportunity to host this event. Special thanks to Ravi Kumar Sir for his wonderful and encouraging words. We would like to thank our Principal Madam, HOD Madam, and all our faculties for their continuous and support and guidance. Our hearty gratitude to all the speakers for sharing their graceful words and experience with us, especially with the students of our current batches. And last but not the least, thank you all the alumni and our dual student for your participation to make the event success. Once again, I thank one and all present here. With this, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you all. So let's meet next year. Yeah. So hope we meet next year in college. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and thank you, faculty. And I would especially like to mention the faculty who've been here since beginning, like Benny sir, I think Rupa, Anupa, then Jharna, Madhurima. Please excuse me if I'm missing someone. Kirti ma'am, Kavita ma'am. I mean, they've been wonderful faculty, and I think they know the students very well. Students love them. So please continue your good work, and let's hope for the good work to continue. Yeah. Thank you, sir, and thank you, students. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. So let's meet next year. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Sapna Manjunath, an alumni of the Oxford School of Architecture. I secured a rank in batch 2015-2020. I would like to thank all my faculty that motivated me and guided me throughout these 5 years. I would also like to thank Pranoti ma'am, my thesis guide who has stood by me during the course and after graduation as well. I'm happy to say that I have secured an admission in the prestigious CEP University for Masters in Urban Infrastructure majoring in WASH.
Good morning all. My name is Monica Valse. I belong to the 2020 batch of TOSA and I secured the 5th rank in BTU. I would really like to thank all the teachers and the management of Oxford for supporting me and encouraging me through this entire journey.
I am Gautam. I have secured 2nd rank in TOSA 2020 batch. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the TOSA faculty and principal for their dedication in guiding me through my journey in the college.
Hi. Myself Clinton Chako. I'm a 2020 passed out student from the Oxford School of Architecture. I recently joined in CEPT Ahmedabad for my Masters in Urban Infrastructure and major in WASH from IHE Delft. I would like to thank all my teachers, all the faculties for guiding us in the right path and helping with all academic.
I am architect Sean Phillip. I graduated in the year 2018. I am happy and grateful for the faculty from Oxford School of Architecture for helping me and guiding me throughout my bachelor's in architecture and which helped me top the batch. Thank you once again.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaushik. I am an alumni of Oxford School of Architecture from the first batch, that is 2012. Currently I am working with Nandi Design Group as an architect. Apart from working, I am a snooker player as well. I have played various state ranking tournaments and represented clubs. I I'll be pursuing my master's in construction management in USA next year. I would like to thank all the staff members of architecture department for being supportive and friendly throughout the degree program. I have no doubt they are very skilled and have expertise in their respective fields. Apart from the normal lectures, we had guest lectures and workshops which helped me develop myself personally and professionally. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the institution for providing me such a great opportunity and experience, and I wish all the best for all the prospective students. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Ritusha and I graduated from the Oxford School of Architecture in 2017, and I also received the first rank in the state, that was the gold medal, and I really thank everybody at TOSA for encouraging me and supporting me in this. They've been a really guiding support, so I really like to thank the amazing faculty, the directors of TOSA for helping me and encouraging me to do so. And I continued on to pursue my master's in landscape architecture in US and Florida, and I also received the Florida State ASLA Awards of Merit, and right now I am working here in Florida as a landscape designer.